Tony K, Elizabeth Shue. She's from Chicago, and she is hot. And if you haven't seen Leaving Las Vegas, you ought to check it out. 1029 WLS Talk Radio, 890 AM, J. Marvin. Under siege, under-recognized, underrated, but somehow keeping the flame of democratic dialogue alive. Don and Roman, the Breakfast Diner, coming up tomorrow morning at 5 a.m., the story of Bill Clinton and the 3 call girls. Ed Curran, embarrassing prisoners. Rowan Gary, the V-chip and the bitter cold. And man, is it cold out there. And then Catherine Johns will be back at 10 with what is she doing? With kids' problems. What's the kids' problem? What's the problem with kids? Excuse me, I'm sorry, what's the problem with kids? I got distracted by that by thinking about the show that she had on before I came on about the last hour there about cyber sex. And about that woman who met that guy online, man. I was saying to her, as much as I'm involved with the internet, I never get into those chat rooms and things because, a lot of those people in those chat rooms are like squirrels. I don't want to deal with it, I really don't. All right, area code 312-708 or 847 or 815-591-8900, or if you're in Norway, I don't know what the hell the country code is for the United States, but you'll have to figure it out. This is another one of these stories kind of like last night, where on the face of it, this thing really looks correct, but there's something about this that bothers me, and I can't pin it down. Maybe it's because I've been in this position before, and maybe a lot of you have been in this position before. And you feel that, you can identify with the idea of, once again, this invasion of privacy and the idea that, well, I got to read you the story. And I think that those of you that have caused, when you were in high school, if you were a troubled child, quote-unquote, in high school, or if you're a troublemaker or a class clown or a goof-off or rebellious or whatever the story was, if you were like me and you just didn't care and you were hell-bent and anything you could do to get out of school because you felt that it was prison and that what they were teaching you basically weren't interested in. Of course, then you find out later in life you blew it, but I think you'll be able to identify with this story. I think you'll be able to get this. And I want to know from you if you think this is a good idea. Because I think on the face of this is a good idea, but there's something about this that bothers me. And, I'd hate to think now, after all these years, I'm suddenly going to become like Mr. Right Wing or something here. Class clowns and goof-offs, beware. This comes from the Associated Press. Bloomington High School is trying to teach you a lesson about responsibility. School administrators are contacting local businesses that employ teens and are urging them to ask for students' school records when making hiring decisions. School administrators are contacting local businesses that employ teens and are asking them for the students' school records when making hiring decisions. Administrators hope that the students with poor records will picture their paychecks going up in smoke and get serious about school. We want them to make the most of it while they're here. This is according to Barry Riley. He's the assistant principal. Their attendance at school is probably going to mirror attendance on the job. Now, see, I disagree with that. Riley and fellow assistant principal Cindy Helmers developed a plan to get businesses involved. They know of no other similar program. Grade and attendance records are private, and the school cannot give them directly to businesses. Administrators hope businesses will come to expect students to turn them over when they apply, much as an adult would offer a resume or a reference. Now, do you agree with, does this sound right to you? See, there's something about this that just doesn't sound right. Bloomington High School has about 1,560 students. Its dropout rate has fallen from 9% to about 3%, administrators say, but that has brought a drop in attendance. Now the school has launched the campaign to increase its 89.7% attendance rate. Students with good attendances can win prizes in cash. Classes hold contests to see which ones compile the best attendance records. See, I have no problem with that. But I have a problem with the idea that if a teenager wants to get a job after school, or maybe this teenager needs to get a job to help support his or her family, that the employer, the business, has a right to look at their school records, which is supposed to be private. Now, maybe this is a good idea. When I heard this and I read this and I thought about this, I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, maybe, education is the most important thing you can get because knowledge is power, and you can't I mean, we can't say that enough. And I say that to all of you out there who are 15, 16, 13 years old listening to this show, even those of you that are in your 20s going to college. I mean, it's worth it. As much as you might think it's BS now, it'll be worth it to you in the future. Knowledge is power. I mean, the more you can learn about things, the better off you are. And I think one of the problems, I think everything in this country revolves around the question of education. I think most of you agree with me on that. That poorly educated public makes for a dumb, prejudiced, stupid, narrow-minded, regressive society. So we want people to be educated. But is this the way to do it? Is this the way to get it done? Is this the way to do it? Is this the way to say that if a 17-year-old who's in a hardship situation... And you know what? Let's forget about the hardship situation. Let's consider this. You know, I had poor grades in school. Bad grades. I mean, I'm not going to exaggerate. Let me tell you the way it is. I had poor grades. We're talking D minuses. We're talking C minuses. We're talking maybe 1B. I never saw an A on a report card ever. In the whole time I was in school. Never. I did work. But my attendance record at the job was better than my attendance record at school. Even when I had jobs that I didn't particularly like. I just could not relate to school. I think there are some that are like that. And the school, being the way it is, with the curriculum and all, and being very rigid, it could not relate to me. Now, as I said before, now do I agree with the idea? Do I agree with the idea that you should go to school, do the best you possibly can, and be as educated as you can? Yes, I agree. I agree with that. If I had to do it all over again, would I take the same course of action? Well, maybe I would, because universally I resent authority. And maybe I would, because I would give the teacher problems, because I just don't want somebody telling me what to do. But you know what? With what I know now, maybe I wouldn't. And maybe I would have paid attention. And I've always said this on the radio. You know, I've said this on WLS a million times. Talk show hosts. We know everything. We must be college educated. We must this, that, and the other. And we never make mistakes. Let me tell you something about me. I mean, there are things that I cannot do because I just never learned how to do them. Because I never paid attention. And I'll give you an example. And Mary and I were having a discussion about this today. Math. I cannot divide. I don't know my multiplication tables. I mean, I know that 5 and 5 is 10, and 5 times 5 is 10, 10 times 10 is 20. I mean, I know that, but I don't know what 7 times 9 is. I couldn't divide 32 into 890. Why can't I do that? Because I never paid attention. Does it mean that I was stupid? No. I just couldn't relate to school. And this gets into this whole thing about kids in school. But it never reflected on my job. It never reflected on my job attendance. And I have I got to say this, I have one of the better work ethics. I mean, even though as much as I sometimes despise management, and I hate structure, I have a good work ethic. I mean, I show up the majority of the time. I don't have a lot of sick days, and I show up, and I have a tendency not to take all of the vacation that's allotted me, and I was like that even when I was in high school, even with jobs that I didn't dig, like being a dishwasher at a steakhouse, and things like that. I mean, I didn't like those jobs, but I showed up and I did them. And I did them because I lived in a household my parents would not give me any money, and if I didn't do that, if I didn't go do those things, I would not have had any spending money at all. Nothing. I had no choice. So under Bloomington's plan, I would have been out of luck maybe. Because maybe I would have gone to the Iron Horse Steakhouse in Orange, California, and I would have said, gee, I want a job as a dishwasher. And the guy who ran the place, the manager, would have said, well, let me see your school attendance records. Let me see how you're doing in school. And, well, let me see here, Mr. Marvin, you have a D- in English, and you got an F in math, and you were absent 15 days out of the month last month. Well, you know, we really can't hire you, kid. You're going to have to, like, buck it up when it comes to high school. I don't think that this program would do any good. I mean, I don't think it would work, really, if you think about it. I mean, I'm looking at my own psyche and my own experience. Now, maybe my own experience is not your experience, and maybe you want to call me at 591-8900, area code 312-708 or 847, and maybe you want to call me and say, wait a minute, Jay, I think it will work, and here's the reason why. And maybe it would work with you. But I don't think it would work with me. I mean, I don't think that I would adhere to that. I think that I would either, A, keep looking for a job where somebody would not want my high school records and my attendance records, or B, I would probably get into trouble. Now, has work ethic changed in this country from now to, say, when I was doing it? Well, everything changes. And maybe the work ethic out there has changed. I don't know. You'll have to tell me, because I'm not involved in that. I'm only involved in my own work ethic. And the work ethic of the people that I work with, which is at this radio station, at WLS, is pretty damn good. I mean, Catherine is here every single night. Don and Roma are here every morning. Ro and Gary are here. Ed's here. I mean, we're here. I mean, we do our thing. Limbaugh's here. We do our thing. But I just don't think the program will work. And I think if the student's economically disadvantaged, then you got a big problem. Because once again, I cite my own case. I mean, I was only economically disadvantaged in that my parents were too tight and too cheap to ever give me any spending money. And so if I wanted something, look, maybe there's some of you who have you grew up in this kind of household. If I wanted to go out and buy a Doors album, if I wanted to go out and I wanted to buy a book, because even though I did bad in English, I always read, I had to work an after-school job to get the money to have those things. If I wanted to take a girl out on a date, which I very rarely ever did, because I very rarely ever had weekends free, because I worked, I mean, I had to work to get the money. I never had a car. Most of my friends did. All of those things. I mean, I had to work to get all of those things. So where would that have put a kid like me? Where would I be? Well, and where does a kid under this program end up when the kid is economically disadvantaged? Area code 312-708 and 847, 591-8900. Oh, and don't tell me do I have to say something? I guess I do. We have like 4 people that want to talk about this. This doesn't hit home with any of you. You didn't go through this as a teenager. You didn't ditch school. I must be the only rebel left alive who will admit to it. This never ceases to fascinate me that I'm the only person who will ever come forward and say, yeah, you know something? I was a really crummy teenager. I was a rebel. I must be amazing on the part of some of you brainstems out there. Michael on a car phone. Michael, you're on WLS.
Jay, good evening. How you doing?
Okay, man.
Here's my read. I don't know how this program all came about, and I missed part of your show, but here's my read on employers and kids in school and vocational education and school education. I have a business, and I operate this business, and I have lots of employees, and one of my employees is a young lady who's a junior in high school. Not a real good student, but we've all taken an interest. I've had my employees take an interest in her education, and I've tried to bring her along in our business to give her opportunities that we give other employees, but I've also made sure that I get involved in her education. Businesses are always encouraged to get involved in the communities and so forth. This is an easy way to do it. Had you gone to work at the steakhouse, for instance, where your manager had a concern not only for your understanding of how that business worked, but maybe how you were doing in school, I think it would have gone a long way with you because you might have looked up to that manager and said, hey, here's a guy who takes an interest in me and how I'm going to help him in the business.
Well, fundamentally, I don't think you're wrong, but we got a problem here. The way they have this thing set up, as I understand it, is I wouldn't get in the door of the steakhouse without the manager first looking at my school records. And what the idea is that the manager will tell children or kids that, teenagers that do not have good attendance records, well, I guess since you don't have good attendance records, I guess you're not going to make a good employee, and see ya.
Well, maybe the manager needs to get involved, though, with the school program, with the student. If the parents aren't convincing the student that it's important enough to show up at school on time or often enough, and